over the piezo. I won't drill a hole in the corner for the sound plug or anything. I'm not going to alter the guitar that much because I don't know if I want to stick with it. If the piezo don't work in there in that slot, then I'll be able to take it out and abandon project and put the guitar back the way it was. But I'm going to take it and I'm going to try to make it a little bit better, and then I'm going to tap that down in there and see if it rides evenly on that piezo, and put strings on it and test it with a little amplifier and run the wires out of the sound hole for now, and a battery, and we'll get it going and we'll see what we get. If we get something useful, fine. If we don't, fine as well. But like I said, I wouldn't suggest drilling holes in the guitar until you get the sound right. And once the sound is good, if I can get it that way, I'll just drill a hole in the corner and I'll install the battery and so forth and have a permanent installation. But in this case, I'd rather say that I'd suggest, if you ever come across one of these and you have to pull the saddle out with pliers, I'd say if it doesn't fit smoothly in there, I'd say abandon project. I'd say you'd have to get a router to do this, and it would have to fit on the guitar, and it would probably cost you some money. And if you're not going to do a dozen of them, you're better off taking to a shop if you want to pay that much money to have one done. But if you get an expensive guitar, you better have it done by a luthier. And this is still a good project to do on a cheap guitar, which I've got here. And let's see if we can get it done. I put the piezo in it. Now you got to be careful. Sometimes when you sand these holes out or clean them up, you're going to end up with debris in the holes that the piezo fits through. So you have the bit handy and clean it out with it, and you'll have your hole straight. And then you reach underneath it, you can feel the bit and you'll know where to push up the piezo. But here's the piezo set. It has the volume and tone, and what I did was I plugged in the power for the battery and the other output. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reassemble it with the bridge and put some strings on it while it's like this, in this condition, because I want to hear if there's if it works at all even, and we'll find out soon. Well, we might have something here, because the saddle, when I put it in, is literally being pushed out by the curve of the piezo in there. So I'm hoping that a few strings on there will keep it down. So let's find out what happens. Well, I put a couple strings on it, give it a little tension, but as you can see, we have one problem after the other. Since the area was routed out a little bit, it's a little wider than you wanted, because we had to get this saddle seat in there. And when we did, it caused a width change, and now this bridge saddle, it's leaning forward as the string tension's on it. The best we can hope for is that it'll settle down. I'll tune the strings up, see where they sit. I might take the old pliers and straighten it out and see if it falls lower into the gap. But we'll have to take one step at a time. We don't want to crack it. And it just shows you that, you know, we're regular men with a pair of pliers and not all the essential tools it takes and the money it takes to do these things. But we all give it a try, because we're all Americans and we do that. And, you know, they say if it isn't broke, don't fix it. But if you can improve it, we can. And thanks to people like Thomas Edison, we wouldn't have the light bulb if he didn't improve the original Italian design. So here's what we got, and I'm going to give it a shot. And like I said, it might work out. And I'll tune it up and I'll straighten out that bridge and see what I can get out of it and see what we have. So the strings are on it, and I've tuned it up, and I've got the tape on the wire so it doesn't hit the strings. And what I did was I got to put a battery on it that'll turn it on, but I ran it to a small amp and I put headphones on so I can hear if there's any difference in the levels or if it works at all. We're going to see now. So I checked it with a small amplifier with headphones, and it works on all of them. And the bass string sounds a little louder. Now that's the side I fed it through. I fed the transducer through that side. And what happens is it goes under the strings like that. And I'm wondering if it's just because the string is louder or because it's on that side. Now, you have the option of stringing it starting on this side and having it end up over here. And I did that in the past on many of them, and it seemed to work real well. This time I chose to use the bass side. I could always flip it around. Now it does work. I kind of forced this bridge down, the saddle down, and got it in the right position. That little light white, you see, that's the sunlight coming through the bamboo curtains I've got up here. But anyway, I wasn't real happy with the sound, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try a different mini amp and see what I get before I make a decision. But it seems to be pretty even. It's just a little distortion, but you can't tell with these 9-volt baby amps what you really have. But I'm going to give it another try with another one with the headphones and see what I get. I plugged another baby amp in there with headphones, and this E is just too pronounced. It's just too pronounced. It's nice. It is not distortion. It was probably from the amp. It was overriding it a little bit, but I'm getting too much sound out of this low. It's very, very beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's not even with the rest of the strings. The other 5 aren't getting it that high. I didn't glue anything in. I didn't do anything positive and permanent. So what I plan on doing is, it's resting too hard on this. It's probably the corner where it bends and goes down. I can try to straighten it out. I can move it in and out, up and down, and try that, and then restring it. But what I'm going to do is probably loosen the strings, give me the ability to get under there if I've got enough string on there, because whoever originally put these strings on put a 1 turn on them. So 1 turn or half turn isn't really enough to work with, so I might have to loosen the strings and they'll fall off at the top, or pull them out here. But anyway, I'm going to do that, and I might just feed it from the bottom up, and that'll give me another sense of sound, and try to miss that hot spot. It's got a hot spot in it. By the way, if you ever do one of these and it has the wire transducer, the piezo, you hopefully will change the strings yourself, because what you want to do is you want to keep that evenness on your saddle. And when you pull the strings out, pull them out one at a time and replace them. That way you keep that evenness. Because I did one for a guy. It was a 12-string, and it was a real tough job. And that was in the, that had to be 20-some years ago. And when I did it, it was a really hard job. And it was a very expensive one. I had to drill a hole in the end of the end pin and put it in. And it was a big unit. It wasn't, it was a big fat thing, and it had a battery in it. And it was a very expensive job, a very expensive unit. But he took it to a guitar store, and apparently they'd never seen anything like that. And they reached in here and they pulled the transducer out and went, "What is this?" And they took all the strings off at once, and it was just a complete nightmare. And in order for me to fix it, I had to order a brand new transducer from the company and replace it and put it in. And it was just a complete nightmare. This guy left me with a nightmare of the saddles, and so keep that in mind. I mean, you could go to the best shop in town, and they'll rip it apart and go, "What's this wire sticking out here?" And they'll screw it up. So keep that in mind, that when you do this, you have to change the strings individually to keep that tension on your saddle, so you don't pull that transducer out once you adjust it and get it perfect. I just wanted to add that this is where it's going to get real goofy, since I'm getting too much tension on this string on the piezo. It's making this string louder. So you can see that these are even just acoustically, but this one's very loud, this low E. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it off. I'm going to pull the strings out of here, and what I'm going to really thought it might work, I'm going to drill the hole here on a bigger angle. I'm going to go in with the bit and the drill, and I'm going to get a bigger angle on it and see if just grinding it down a lower angle, maybe that'll take some tension off here. But this is the string with quite a bit of tension on it, so it's going to rest pretty hard on that piezo. So I'm going to try to just take the angle and change it a little bit and fiddle around with it. This is where it gets fiddling around, where you try to get it right by fiddling around, and you usually do, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of patience. And I've seen other videos where a guy, "Oh, you just drop it in, you drill a hole, you drop it in." It does not work that way. In order to get evenness, if you're a stickler for making even sound and having the strings sound evenly, you have to adjust them. I don't really care which one you get. I had to adjust the ovation as well for evenness. I've had people pick out the the D or the G was a little louder or less loud, and you can actually pick it out, and then you have to maybe sacrifice a flat toothpick underneath it or something trying to get it right. But to dial it in right is a very tedious factor, and I think everybody should try it and realize that it's not a simple drop-in job. If it was factory done, they have everything cut to size and everything's laid out perfectly so it all fits together, and they might get one or two out of a bunch that are bad and they might have to readjust it. But when you do it yourself and you buy aftermarket equipment, you're going to get these problems, and it's hard to do and it's hard to fix. But you have to say, well, I'm going to do it. And you devote your time. And it's about loving your guitar and loving the sound you get out of it. Because if I were to take this out and play it, people are going to go, hey, that E string is just too loud. It sounds terrible. And all they're going to hear is this. And they're not going to hear these other strings. They're going to hear, it's going to be like that all the time. So you really want to get it right. Because it's going to plug into a PA or an amplifier. And you want to sound really nice with it. But it's not going to sound nice if that low E is bad. So I thought it really sounds good. All the other strings do sound good, but they're a little lower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill this on a bigger angle, try to take some of that off. Now, if that doesn't work and I put it back together and I don't like it, I'm going to take and run the original wire back in, and I'm going to run it from this side up. And then sometimes you have to slide them over one way or another to try to get it more evenness, because this is a cheap item that I bought, and you got to work with this cheap stuff. So we'll figure it out. With some testing, we found out that there's a problem here, because the low E bass is very much louder than the rest of them, so it's very uneven. But it can be caused by a couple factors. It could be caused because there's a bump that raises it back underneath this E with that with the braided wire that is the piezo pickup for this system. Now what happens is, if it's got a bump here underneath it in the wood, it'll push it harder and tighter against it. Or maybe this is just tighter because the string has more tension on it than the rest. Well, you can turn it around, you can drive it in through this end, because now it's drifting up, coming up through this end, going down to here and ends on this side. If we put it up through the other way, we can find out if it's a bump in the system or if it's the pickup. So the best bet is to take this apart again, put a straight edge in here and run it up and down and look for a raise here. If there's a raise near this end, that could be it. Or look at the wire and see if it's raised up and maybe it has a bump in it, and try to smooth it out. We're going to have to take a look at it in different ways. This is one of the problems you'll run into when you put these in. You try to get accuracy. Let's take it apart and look at it again. I pulled the strings out and I noticed that the I don't know if you can see it there, the transducer is a little higher there by the low E. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and pull it out and go in there and see if I can lower the space that it sits in. See if just to get a little lower and see if we can even it out a little more. But it's a little higher there for a little area of the E and halfway to the A. So I'm going to get that straightened out. Sliding a straight edge to it, it's got this little straight edge, and I put it in the saddle slot. When I slide, it catches right about, well, it's a half. It's about at the E and halfway over to the A string. So what I have to do is I'm going to have to try to break this ridge down in here. So I'm going to try a few things and see what I do. I've been using a handheld bit, using this, you know, just a drill bit that fits in that slot. And I'm getting up this residue, and it looks like it's the epoxy that's coming up, because, you know, the rosewood would be too hard for that. Either that or it's coming into the body. But no, it looks like the residue from epoxy. So I'll see if I smooth that out, if it makes a difference. We put the piezo back in it because I took and found a lump underneath here, and I kind of chiseled it down inside there. And all I have to do now is tune it up. then I'll plug the electronics into it, and I'll put headphones on, and let's see what we have after this. The guitar's been tuned up. I plugged it into a amplifier source. I put headphones on, listen to it. The low E is significantly louder than the rest of the guitar, and you can usually tell when it's like that because it sounds like another guitar playing a low E in another amp or something. I played all the notes up and down and tested everything, and it's definitely louder. Now I'm beginning to think, now I did bring that down to a low level over there. So I think the next thing to do is to take the strings off again, pull that out, pull that piezo out, and adjust it up and down, in and out. And I think I'm actually going to put it in from the high E side and see if there's a significant change, or if the high E gets higher. Let's see if it still rings the same, then we know it's just a bump here somewhere. But it seems pretty smooth right there now. And another thing is, you know, the intensity of the strings pushing down on that piezo makes a world of difference too. I mean, if you don't care if it's even or not, it's done, but it's not done in my opinion. So I'm going to take it apart, and I'm going to feed it through this side and have it come out on this side. And if it's still loud, then we know we have to chisel this down somewhat over here. But it seems pretty even for the other 5 strings. So we know we did something right. But it's still too loud in the low E. If it's a frequency that the amp picks up, I don't think it's true on that part. I think it has to be adjusted till it's even. So I'm going to take it apart again, and I'm going to flip it around, and we're going to see a huge difference, if not any difference at all. But let's see what happens by adjusting that piezo. Beautiful. We've achieved success. What I did was I brought it in from the high E side and ran it over. I ran that transducer over to the bass side and tucked it in. Then I restrung it, and I hooked it up to this a battery-operated little thing with headphones. Anyway, I got it going, and it's as even Steven as it's going to get, and it was probably the transducer, and it laid better this way than it did going that way. A lot of places recommend it running from the bass side down. This one's running better from the treble side down. So that'll fix it, and I'll get back to this and wire it back in and tape it back inside, and we'll see what we have when we finish. We still got to cut a hole in it for the for the plug, and put a hole in it and straighten that out. It'll be fine. Coming up. Okay, we finally found a happy medium, whereas it's even all along here. Sorry about the odd light that's from the shade on the screen porch here. It's a little bamboo shade. Anyway, before I pull the strings again, now that I've got it all even, I'm going to pull a couple of them out and leave room just enough to tape down with masking tape. Tape down the saddle. And then when I take the rest out, I'll tape the rest of it down for now. Because you don't want to leave that saddle flopping around when you take the strings off. It'll lose its impression on the piezo. So I'd suggest pulling a couple of strings off and taping it down in place so it doesn't move. Tape it nice and tight with the masking tape. When I get that done, what I want to do is I'll be able to reach inside it. Now the main thing about this is I am not going to put the post on that they give you on that strap end. You have to drill a huge hole in there. Basically what you'll get when you do that is you'll need you need a nice sized bit. Here's just a 1/4-inch bit, which will fit right in one of these 1/4-inch plugs. It fits right in there. Now you need to make a little hole bigger for this. I want to switch from this this tailpiece one, which would fit in here, into a block of wood. You'd have to drill that all out, and it's a real pain. But I like putting them on the corner of the guitar. It's right in the corner there, and you know, that way you can reach in and out. It's like having a nice electric guitar. It's like having a Les Paul or something. You could always put a plate on there if you want to. Get a Les Paul plate, usually about the same radius as the curve on any other guitar. And then what you do is when I do this, I'm going to convert this plug into the plug that I'm going to use, like a 1/4 inch plug, a typical one. It's got a couple wires on it, makes it easier for me to pick up. But I'll drill a hole for it and it'll fit finely through the wood. Put a washer on it, spacer and so on, and get it tightened in there. It'll stay in good shape. And the reason I want to do that is a friend of mine wants this. He wants this plug because he removed electronics from a mandolin and he can't fit anything in that hole. So I want to give him this, number one. Number two, I thought I'd like to try this again. I have taken these and rewired them onto here, but they're always different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook a meter to it. I've got a nice meter, and I'm going to check the continuity and which one is which, because one of them is for a switch that turns on this unit. It'll turn it on when you plug it in. That way the battery's not always on. That's why it's 3-conductor. It's got a red, a white, and the black main conductor coming down, getting into this outside ring. And I'm going to check each one for continuity and see where they go in a position, in the position of the plug that goes into the amp. And then make sure that everything's right on. And then when I desolder them, I'll know which color is which, because you can't always trust the electronics you buy on eBay and some of these places, and especially with cheap stuff that's toyish, you might find that it's not up to any standards. There are no standards for these wires. Red means one thing and white and black mean another thing, and it doesn't always apply. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook a meter up to it. Got a meter hooked up to it. It's an older meter. It's got a continuity test. So what I'm going to do is test the continuity of this, and when I have this plug into the plug, into the jack, just as if it's a guitar. Now I'm going to touch the outside. There it is. I'm getting a beep. That's telling me there's continuity there, and it beeps with the white wire and the black wire. So that's your switch working, but it tells me that the outside ring is black and ground. And the white one's probably the switch, but I'm going to have to do a little thorough testing to find this out. So I did a little more testing on it with the meter, and I found out that the red on here